Hi everybody, it's Lone here from wolfterritories.org, Wolf Territories Grid, and I'm going to talk today about a bit of technical stuff. Don't turn off yet because it's really important. One of the big issues with OpenSim and is storing the assets. Now obviously assets, they're tons of little files that store things like images and objects and all those things, and obviously over time, as you get more users, and some people are a bit of prim piggies, and you know who you are, little prim piggies, so you store more and more stuff, and eventually your disk gets full, and then you're stuck because you've got the huge asset store that you've got to move somewhere else, and then you take your grid offline for 2 weeks, and while you move the asset store, and everyone gets frustrated. So Wolf Territories Grid, I wanted to find a way around this, and there is some technology that we can use that is reasonably new, that allows us to store the asset store in a way where it's very unlikely we're ever going to run out of space, and it's really ideal for this sort of storage of objects, which is what all the assets are. So although they're referenced by a database, the database is really rather small. Even if it's got 100,000 assets or a million assets in it, it's not going to be physically very big on the disk. So you can keep that with my main grid server that's got the databases on it. It's got 2 terabytes of space on it, SSDs, so that's going to be fine. And basically our structure at the moment, we've got 8 servers with 2 terabyte SSDs, 60 gig of RAM, and 12 cores. So that's why Wolf Territories Grid runs so fast. People comment about how they land, and bam, it's resed because of that. So I wanted to get over the problem before it became a huge problem of the grid running out of disk space. And so I've just put my mouth and look at this, so he's talking away, so I'm talking away here. So what I decided to do was to look at object-based storage. I believe we are the only grid in OpenSim anywhere that is using object storage, and the beauty, it's got some really cool features. It's not ideal for doing database stuff on, you can't run a database on it, but it's ideal for when you've got thousands and thousands of small objects, which is just like the asset store. For OpenSim, it's perfect for it because that's exactly what we store: thousands and thousands of small files that are cached. So it's got a caching system built into it, and the beauty of it is it's very cheap to buy data. It's 250 gig for like $2 a month on Contabo. Amazon S3 is a lot more expensive. I wouldn't use Amazon for hosting OpenSim unless you've got very deep pockets. For those of you who are not native English speakers, that just means you've got a lot of money. You can use some other providers, but object storage, basically Contabo's object storage is S3 object storage, which is pretty standard and allows you to be compatible with the way that Amazon do it. So that's really cool. So imagine a world where you could have virtually unlimited disk space for your objects in a file system that isn't a file system. It's a metadata way of storing stuff that allows you to store all these objects in a really distinctive way that's really fast and works really well for that type of application. Well, that's what object storage is. So it took 9.5 hours to move 55 gig of assets from the SSD into object storage, because it has to kind of repopulate it. I looked at a couple of things, S32FS or whatever it's called. I found was just blatantly slow. It was terribly slow. It took ages to do anything, and we were getting nowhere. So I moved over to something called RCLONE, which is a really cool bit of kit, and RCLONE was much faster. It still took 9 hours, but it was much faster. I kept the grid online all the way through the transfer because I figured that I started the transfer at about 10 at night UK time, which is when a lot of people are not online. So I figured we wouldn't lose much in terms of anything created after the asset had been transferred, because it's doing it by asset, and then afterwards I could run another sync to make sure the assets were synced across. I haven't done that because I just think it's unnecessary, because there was nobody around basically during that time. So if you got a small grid now, if you move to this now, then you're not going to have problems in the future. Now, just to give you an idea, let me have a look at this. So over here, this is actually all the disks. If you're not used to Linux, because all our servers are Linux, this is the disks on our main server that's connected to the asset store, and you can see the one that says WT grid, and you see it says 1 petabyte. Okay, that is a huge amount of disk space, and that means that I'm not going to be struggling in the future with disk space. We're not going to have a disk space issue, and the way it's stored as well on, you know, it's all properly RAIDed across drives and things like that. It's really secure, and it's going to be a great way of storing data, just like this, with lots of objects. So to read Wikipedia's definition, object storage known as object-based storage is computer-based storage architecture that manages data as objects as opposed to other storage architectures like file systems, which manage data as a file hierarchy, and block storage, which manages data in blocks with sectors and tracks. Each object typically includes the data itself, a variable amount of metadata, and a globally unique identifier. Object storage can be implemented at multiple levels. So basically, the first issue is, how do we get OpenSim to talk to the object storage? Okay, instead of talking in the language that the file system language OpenSim's built for, to get it to talk in object storage. The cool thing is RCLONE can mount a drive, so on Linux, that mnt/wt grid on my server, if I go to that folder, I'm actually talking to the object storage, and it will convert the file system requests from OpenSim into object storage requests. So that means now, you know, Wolf Territories Grid can handle an awful lot of data. We've got currently 5 terabytes, and it auto resizes as well. Let's say in 2 years' time we go over 5 terabytes of asset store. The object storage will automatically up the size of it. So it's basically going to be a many years, probably 100 years, 200 years, if we're still here, before Wolf Territories Grid runs out of space for its asset store. So we won't be going down for 3 days. We do have, you know, region restarts obviously, but we try and avoid them. And there are some gotchas. So gotcha number 1 is, when you boot your system, make sure you wait 120 seconds before starting Robust, so that your system has had time to mount the object storage as a drive. Otherwise, of course, Robust is going to get very confused when it can't find its asset store, which then shortly afterwards appears. So that's that. I mean, what you could do is actually put the mount in, you know, so I've got it in a cron tab, so when the system boots, it mounts it, and then it runs my it boots the grid, or it boots this server on the grid. Of course, with this as well, you can, if you've got multiple servers like I have, you can actually reboot Robust and the rest of the servers stay running, so if anyone's on a region, they can carry on using it. So if you want to see these little boxes here, you can come to Wolf Territories Grid, details in the description. You can click here on our destination guide, scroll across to, where is it? Wolf Territories Exhibition is. Where is it? Wolf Territories Exhibition. Here it is, Exhibition Centre. And just walk over to the big forum thing. I'll show you where that is. So basically, there's a few buildings here. This is for our virtual exhibitions. And I'll leave these objects here for people to have a look at in regard to this video. So I know that's horribly technically boring, but it does address a huge issue with OpenSim, and that is the ever-expanding asset store and prim piggies who like thousands and thousands of prims and have 28,000 prims in their inventory. Okay, I'm Lone Wolf. This is Wolf Territories Grid. Thanks very much.